Hello and welcome to the CDO magazine interview series. I am Denise Collison with SHI International, and we are partnering with CDO magazine, MIT, CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Kathryn Darnall Helms, who is the Chief Data Officer of the state of Oregon. Welcome, Kathryn.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to chat with you about data.
Can I ask you a question about that advisory council? So I'm just curious, again, new in your role, new to the state, how did you go about finding the right people to come in and participate on that council? And what are those people getting out of it that they might have missed out on if they hadn't decided to be a part of it?
So when I first joined the state, I essentially did a little speaking tour, right? Met with anyone who was interested in chatting with the CDO. So I met with the chief information officers for state agencies. I reached out to research directors, agency directors, and their deputies, and essentially had just quick meet and greets. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is the way I do business, essentially. I think especially coming from an enterprise lens, there can always be trepidation with these new executive roles of, are they going to issue policy that I don't have resources to comply with, right? Are they going to show up with mandates that make it difficult for me to participate, either because I don't have resourcing or, it's that mandate or authority, but not necessarily a lot of responsibility, or
Right.
a lot of responsibility, but not a lot of authority.
Right.
And so what I did is really built those relationships and then started to see where state agencies were already engaging in really good practices. So we've had some state agencies that were in the process of hiring their first agency chief data officers at the time that I joined. We also had agencies that were already integrating data with one another. We have, a tremendous diversity in terms of agency size. So I wanted to make sure that we were representing each of the policy areas that we serve, which we at the state have kind of chunked into 6 different policy areas: natural resources, health, administration and business services, public safety. So we've got this bucket of policy areas that we've been working with, and then also small, medium, and large agencies. So I wanted to make sure we had representation from each of those groups, and then also wanted to make sure that we were leveraging agencies that were kind of throughout the spectrum in terms of their maturity. So I worked by just reaching out to those allies within agencies that I knew would be really meaningful to have participation from. And the first iteration of our advisory council was a little bit smaller. And as we've grown, we've really leveraged their communities as well, right? So, we might have a representative from the Criminal Justice Commission make another recommendation for who within the public safety area should be included in future conversations. And that's been able to give us a really strong cohort of folks who collaborate with one another and are familiar with one another. Or they might present agencies that they say, I know they've got a tremendous range of data, or I know they're doing something interesting, but I don't actually know what. And I'd love for us to reach out to them and engage them and build that opportunity for engagement. So the advisory council has been really instrumental for me. And I think a lot of what they get out of it is that ability to be part of a community and then to help set our strategy. So they'll be working with me to set our priorities for the next 2 years, and then we'll, reach out to the state community and the community as a whole and hear their feedback. But they have that ability to be part of those cutting edge conversations, right? Recognizing that, the state is heading in a specific direction, or one of our recent conversations was, we don't have a data scientist classification at the state yet. How do we build one? So they're able to be part of that ground floor work and build that social network that they have at the same time that they're helping to influence this enterprise policy work.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that we both know that. And one of the very common themes I've heard with all of my interviews has really been that cross-team collaboration, especially in public, that cross-agency collaboration is critical. It's core critical to any successful strategy. And so it seems to me that work, that time that you spent putting that advisory council together so thoughtfully, really has helped you and the state to get to a place where you have this like incredible buy-in and diversity of perspective, which is really important. So I love that approach, and I'm sure the listeners are going to also take a lot of notes on that, and who knows, maybe you'll be hearing from some of them for more tips and tricks. You never know. So thank you for sharing that. I think those are some really incredible lessons learned and best practices there. So we've been talking about a little bit about collaboration and inclusivity, and you gave us some examples of actual collaboration that happening in the Oregon environment. Is there anything that you can share further about how maybe two agencies are collaborating together, or like any specific use cases where you could say the community at large came and gave us this feedback, and then we were able to produce this, meaningful set of data or this outcome for them that is, helping them to be, get access to the things that they want to know about? Any specific examples that you can share with us?
In the Oregon environment, I think we have two really strong examples, both about leveraging integrated data. So the first is our statewide longitudinal data system. So
Mhm.
Oregon's launched its statewide longitudinal data system in 2018, so a little bit before I arrived. So I can't take credit for that good work, but I will say, as someone who sits on the governance committee and helps support that work, it's a really strong example of how Oregon has been able to leverage interagency collaboration and partnership for integrated data. So one of their research projects recently that was prioritized by a research committee and went through a governance council that I helped support through the executive board, leveraged data related to nursing. So one of the things that the pandemic, I'm sure, has taught everyone or showed everyone, right, is that we have a dearth of healthcare workers, and we desperately need to make sure that there's a constant kind of supply and engagement of qualified nurse
Yeah.
practitioners, healthcare workers. And Oregon specifically has struggled to meet that kind of supply demand balance. So we might have, say, qualified nursing applicants, but not enough positions within Oregon schools to give them the education that they need in order to move on to a healthcare career. So
Mhm.
this project actually focused on where in that kind of pathway from qualified applicant all the way to nurse entering the professional field, are we experiencing any sort of bottlenecks? Are there not enough teachers? Are there not enough spaces? Are there not enough schools in specific regions, right? So do people
Mhm.
have to travel specifically to Portland when they might live in a rural community, and the rural community might need that healthcare worker more? So we've looked at identifying some of those bottlenecks and making recommendations. So the research results are looking to come out later in 2023, but it's been a really great opportunity to leverage that kind of data-informed decision making for policymakers, because there's an opportunity here
Yeah.
to look at and invest in education in new ways, and also directly deal with a shortage of much needed workers.
Yeah, talk about an impactful use
Mhm.
of data. That's an incredible example. I want
Yeah.
to I want to talk a little bit more about inclusivity and data ethics. I mean, we know these are big topics just in general. How has Oregon's data strategy incorporated considerations of ethics, equity, and inclusion? Are you doing anything specific? Are there specific things that steps that you're taking to make sure that you are thinking about those things?
Ethical use and data equity are really critical components of our data strategy. They're also critical components of a lot of our integrated data work. So,
Mhm.
as we built our state data strategy, as I mentioned, we had community based organizations come and essentially do equity reviews, right? Are we incorporating equity and inclusion and ethics around data? Are we incorporating community voice? Are we using appropriate language to describe the fact that we do have data that contains bias, and we need to be able to address systemic bias within our data in order to leverage it appropriately, especially if we're thinking about more advanced analytic opportunities like predictive modeling or AI. We want to make sure that we're working with quality data that represents our constituency. Another space where we're really seeing some strong incorporation of equity is through the Oregon Child Integrated Data Set. So this is a
Mhm.
partnership between Oregon Health Sciences University and the state of Oregon. It's another integrated data system that's focused on integrated data for policymakers to make specific decisions around health outcomes and education outcomes for children, generally focusing on like a birth 0 to 5 cohort, or a birth to 5 cohort. And we are currently participating in an equity and practice learning community to help build community engagement strategies. So this work is sponsored by Actionable Intelligence for Social Policy, but we're participating as a grantee to build a community engagement strategy related to data equity. We've also been able to actually hire an equity and data focused role within my office. So we have an equity and analytics role that's designed to focus on things like data ethics guidelines. How would we create statewide governance for some of these larger integrated data initiatives? How do we incorporate community voice and feedback? I think there's naturally some concern around these large scale big data initiatives when it comes to government. We want to make sure that we're respecting the privacy and autonomy of our constituents and that their voices are heard when we integrate data. So this has been a really great opportunity for us to build some of those frameworks as we look at larger data sharing opportunities.
Wow, you've covered every angle of that. That's impressive. And I think if I was a constituent of the state of Oregon, I would feel really good to know that you were taking that so seriously and really coming at it from every angle, not just from your own lens or your team's own lens. You're really involving other parties to make sure that you're addressing it as best as you possibly can. That's a really neat perspective. So we know it's surging. The data field is surging, and there are a lot of open job recs for people in data. There's not as many people who are ready to accept positions in those fields. But we know it's going to continue. How can the government specifically better cultivate data literacy and data leaders? And how is Oregon currently cultivating data leaders internally?
Oregon has been focusing on building a data-informed culture for a while, especially incorporating that into our first data strategy biennial action plan. So we're in the process right now of establishing our first statewide data literacy framework. This, again, is a collaborative effort, so it includes representation from community colleges, education, state agencies, local government, county government, city government. So really a diverse range of stakeholders. And the idea is to build a more persona-based literacy framework for the state that helps us upskill staff where they are. So there's core expectations around what an agency end user might be expected to know related to data versus an executive versus a manager, giving them the ability to kind of look at, well, if I'm in this space within my career and I'm interested in moving forward or interested in growing more, these are some of the other skill sets that I need to cultivate. And the hope is that we'll actually be able to build a training program based upon some of those competencies so that we can start training and cultivating the staff where they are. So I think there's, it's always important to make sure that you're recruiting folks that are new to the public sector and interested in state government to really spark that fire for public service. But we also have hundreds and thousands of employees that are data motivated, data focused, that have deep context knowledge of their specific service area. And we want to make sure that their needs and their growth are also represented and respected. So this is a space where we're really seeking new opportunities for partnership and growth. But I think there's a lot of opportunity and space here, especially with the growth of organizations and entities that are doing things like data science cohorts and trainings and boot camps. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, what we create as a result of this data literacy framework effort, and then how we're able to actually match employees with the appropriate training that they need to grow in their skill sets.
I just am kind of a little bit in awe of just your holistic perspective that you're bringing to that role, and just all of the different facets of what it means to be a chief data officer and how you're bringing those all together at the state. It's really impressive.
I've been really lucky as well with strong partnership, and you're always welcome to come visit Oregon.
Yeah, I love it there. I love it there. So you don't have to ask me twice. I will let you know when I'm in town. For everyone out there, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.